So let's take a look at a really simple example of working with arrays. And this is going to be a really typical problem that you've probably solved before in the past. It's to find the maximum value in an array. And I'll be in the habit of stating these problems in as formal a statement as I can, right? So I'll demonstrate the input and the output. The input in this case is an array of numbers A, and the largest value would just be the largest value in A. And we could take a look at a few examples of this, right? So if I were to give you an array of numbers, we don't dictate that it's sorted or anything like that. It's just an array of numbers. In this case, we would go through and just search to see what the largest value is. In this case, it would be 9. So that would be our largest value, right? So that would be an example of this particular problem. This sort of a problem is very easy to solve using just like a simple iteration, right? So what we could do is we could say, well, we'll assume that the maximum is going to be the list's first value. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to iterate through all the values in the list. I'm going to say if that value that we're currently at is greater than the maximum, then the maximum becomes that value. And then all I do is I just return that maximum value. That's really all there is to it, right? So if I go ahead and print this out, I can print out the max of one of these examples, say 619402, right? And if this were correct, I would expect it to give me a value of 9. And we could go ahead and run this and see what happens, right? So if I run array max, we get the value of 9, right? So that's exactly what we expected. So it seems like this is a pretty reasonable approach to this problem, and this seems to solve our problem pretty well. Now the question that I have for you is, what is the runtime of this, right? Best, worst, average case. In the case where you see a for loop like this, right? A for loop means that our iteration is always going to be consistent unless we have something that takes us out of it, like a break. But in this case, there is no break or anything like that. So we always iterate through the whole of the list. So whenever you see a for loop like this, you immediately start to think, well, the amount of time that it takes is going to not differ based on the actual input. Best, worst, and average case are probably going to be about the same. We can see that all we really do is we iterate through the whole list. We check if the value is greater than the max, and we set the max. These are all simple constant time operations. So it looks like it just depends on the size of the list itself. So in this case, I could say that we have an O(n) time complexity for this problem. So there you go. We solved our first simple array problem, and we talked through a simple approach to analyzing the time complexity for this problem. So that gets us nice and warmed up for some of the different iterations that we'll look at. This kind of iteration works really well for cases where we just need to get through the list and check something, right? Find a maximum, find a minimum. Things like linear search where we want to find a value inside of the list. This sort of problem works really well for this kind of straightforward iteration. In the next video, I'm going to introduce a different kind of iteration that you may not have seen before called a two-pointer iteration. This one comes up with a lot of interesting problems and lets us iterate our arrays a little bit quicker. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.